Hello and welcome to I Can't Believe It's Not the Mouse, the podcast all about animation not made by the mouse. I'm your host, Octaviano Macias, and I'm not gonna lie, today's episode is kind of sadder than it was originally intended to be. This episode should be coming out around the time of Easter, and I wanted to do something that related to that, so I went with a classic animated film that I really liked growing up, and that a lot of people generally love. They love this movie. It was already something that I had planned out, and then tragedy struck. As of this recording, Val Kilmer, the star of the film, has recently passed away. I wasn't planning to do this as an episode talking about a movie he was in post his life. As such, it is very sad. For what it's worth, it's still an incredible movie, and if him passing gets more people to watch it again, then that's great. Of course, I do hope that he rests in peace. The way he went out is something that no one should have to go through in life. Yeah, it's very tragic stuff, and I'm not gonna dwell on it too much because it's heavy stuff, and I am not equipped to talk about that stuff too much. So yeah, the Prince of Egypt. Before we get started, I just want to say, if you're listening to this on YouTube, go ahead and give it a like, subscribe to the channel, feel free to comment, and ring the bell for notifications. Also, if you're on Spotify or just any other podcast site, follow this show on those platforms. So, The Prince of Egypt is one of the earliest Dreamworks films. I don't think it's the earliest. I'm pretty sure Ants came before this one, but it is one of the oldest films that Dreamworks made, one of their strongest. I think that they have made at least a couple of movies that are a little better than it since then, but we're not here to talk about what's better and what's not. We're here to talk about The Prince of Egypt, which is an incredible animated feature. It's the story of Moses, which I know probably has turned off a lot of you people who are completely unaware of this film for whatever reason, because let's be honest here, a lot of religious cinema, especially in more recent years, has been not good. Often preachy, it's often very in your face, and if you've seen a lot of religious individuals out there, they don't really practice what they preach. They are rude, they tend to push their ideology to others to a point that they end up hurting others, and it's all just negative stuff that is not good. I don't like it. I fully understand why that would turn you off from this film. But let me just say that once upon a time, that wasn't always the case. Now, obviously, there was always like the preachy religious films that were never really all that good. But there used to be a time when movies made with religion in them were actually given an actual budget, were actually good, and didn't feel like they were just these threatening films basically made by people who were basically telling you that you were going to hell if you didn't believe. And this is one of those. This was, of course, long after the heyday of a bunch of the religious epics being made in theaters, but it was still, it feels something like closer to that style. I don't think I need to go through too much of a summary of what this movie is about. Like I said, it's the story of Moses. If you know the whole thing, Hebrews are slaves. He comes in and tells the Pharaoh, hey, let my people go. He denies it, and a whole bunch of stuff of God. The waters are part. They cross through. The end. But what I do think sets this one apart from a lot of them is that this one really does emphasize the fact that Moses and the Pharaoh were brothers. Of course, Moses was adopted. It is that whole story that has become known for Superman, where his mother sent him off to escape danger. But whereas there has been, of course, versions of this where they acknowledge that, this is the one where I think really zeroes in on the fact that, these guys are brothers and how that affects both of them. Because even by the end of the movie, you do get a sense of the tragedy of Moses understanding, I'm screwing over my brother, and I don't want to screw over my brother over this. And the Pharaoh, Ramses, basically feeling increasingly hurt and heartbroken over the fact that his brother is the one that's causing him all this pain. It's incredible stuff. I mean, when you think about celebrity voice actors, this is some of the best ones that I've seen. Ralph Fiennes plays the role of Ramses, the villain of the movie, the Pharaoh, and he's incredible at it. But then, of course, you got Val Kilmer, who plays Moses, and I'm willing to say it's one of his best performances that he ever had in his entire life. It was just so good in the way he did it, and I love the fact that the movie even has him be the voice of God, because it was just like, oh, he's understanding this from a perspective that, you know, his mind can, handle, that makes it so otherworldly, yet, I don't know, it makes it really soulful, I think. But yeah, that's the general story, and what makes it really work is just the emotion that you get out of it. Like, because this is an animated feature, you do get some moments that are a little goofy, but it always feels like it's reined in just enough where it's like, okay, this is just family hijinks, I don't know, like Looney Tunes kind of stuff. Even though it does get kind of goofy at times, but for the most part, when the movie decides to lock in on the harsher, more emotional moments, it truly delivers. The music in this is incredible. It did win an Oscar for one of its songs, and I think most of the musical numbers are just great. There's Deliver Us, just this big, epic, bombastic song that, you know, goes through so much emotion. You got the plagues depicted in a montage through song, and it really gives this kind of horror vibe of like, yeah, this is horrible stuff that God is doing to these people. Like, we're not shying away from the fact that this is horrible stuff. We're not trying to make it seem like whether or not you feel justified by it. Like, you know, it's not a nice little thing that he did. Like, no, it is very cruel, like, you know, whether it's, you know, people suffering from diseases, locusts, you know, swarming in, pretty much like all these horrible things going on, and it is portrayed almost like a horror sequence of just like these awful things happening as all these animals are dying, as all these people are being hurt, as hellfire is raining from the sky. It's awesome. All that stuff just makes for an incredible movie. I feel like couldn't be made today, not because DreamWorks wouldn't be, you know, willing to do it, but because so many religious groups have become so sensitive and they don't like acknowledging that, yes, there are some very intense, messed up things that happen in the Bible, courtesy of, well, God. God may be loving, but he is vengeful in these stories. And, you know, vengeful for a reason, but still vengeful. So it does become the whole thing where it's like, I feel like a lot of this could not be actually told today because a bunch of Christians, you know, whatever, are gonna be mad about it, basically saying like, oh, you're making him look evil, you're telling the story wrong. They're gonna say all this stuff that makes it look as if they're these kind, innocent individuals, but really all they want is more hate for specific groups. That's what it feels like. It's a shame because it's like, yeah, this is the kind of stuff that I would love to see made. Like, I am not a very religious person. I don't really care all that much for all this stuff, but I do like a good story. I do like seeing good adaptations, and I do want people to be like, okay, well, how can we take these stories that mean a lot to someone, and how can we, you know, present them in a way that feels big, epic, and it doesn't feel like it's coming down on anyone. It just feels like, yeah, we're telling it, and we're also trying to spread love, because at the end of the day, this is still, you know, a story about someone trying to free a bunch of people and leading them with kindness against the guy who is just cruel. And even though bad things happen to this guy, it's only because it's a whole like, well, since you've been so cruel to these people, this is essentially your cruelty turned back on you, and it makes for an incredible story. Of course, what makes The Prince of Egypt really stand out is its animation. This was a hand-drawn animated feature, one of the very few from DreamWorks. As a result, there are a lot of scenes that are just gorgeous. There are scenes where you see just the scale of Egypt. You see a whole bunch of people working, you know, you see them walking from, you know, place to place, and it's, you know, you get all these views from far away. Of course, when you're close up, you see the detail in all of it. But, you know, it gives you a whole scope of just how massive this place is and how massive this story is. The whole opening on this just feels like just shots and shots of just people being tortured you really get a sense of like, yeah, these people are in a horrible place and they need someone to come in and rescue them. Even by the end of the movie, when you see, everyone walking away from, from the place, from Egypt, you get a sense of like, yes, these people are finally free, and it's just this massive, joyful celebration as they're walking towards whatever free land is coming for them. It's beautiful, and I like the fact that the movie, as a result of having all these massive shots, you can see so many different things from so many different characters that aren't even really characters in the movie. They're just these, people that are animated in there doing things, and it just gives it so much more life, because there's so many animated films where characters in the background are just going to be doing random things, just very static stuff, and it never really feels like there's any life to them. It just feels like, okay, they're just building up the scene, which is fine. I got nothing against that, but I always appreciate it when you can give them like little personality, and it tells you so much about the world that they're in. Like when it comes to like the ending, when they're walking out of Egypt, one of the things I like that it isn't really talked about much in the movie is just how it's not just the Hebrews that are leaving. You also see some of the guards that are clearly just fed up with whatever went on, just decide like, you know what, we're joining them. We're going to walk along and help them out. Of course, Ramsey still has his loyal servants, because, there is a climax where he's chasing after them and is trying to kill all the people just, out of spite. But you can clearly see like, okay, there's still some guards right there that are pretty much helping them out, and they're making their way through. It's not something that you notice too much on unless you're paying attention. There are a few shots where they're a little more in your face, but it's still just one of those like, okay, unless you're actually paying attention, you'll notice it. And I think that's cool, because it really showcases like, yes, at the end of the day, this movie is about love and kindness, because it's like, yeah, we could have easily just been like, oh, all the people who were part of Ramsey's, like his whole thing are evil, and all of the heroes are good. But like, no, you actually do get the sense of like, look, even some of the people who were there with Ramses traded sides once they realized like, yeah, this is a lost cause, and you know what, we're gonna be right there, and they're not told to go away or anything. Again, love and open arms. This is what these religions should be preaching, and they technically are preaching, but the people out there who do the preaching for them love doing the worst possible job on it. I don't know. It's just really touching stuff, and I really love it. I've already talked about Val Kilmer and Ralph Fiennes. There are some other celebrity voices here. Michelle Pfeiffer plays Moses' wife. You got Sandra Bullock and Jeff Goldblum playing his real siblings. Patrick Stewart is great as essentially the original Pharaoh, the one who was Moses' adopted father. That stuff is all really good. I know the one that probably sticks out the most for a lot of people, and not in a great way, is that you have Steve Martin and Martin Short as these assistants to the Pharaoh, Hotep and Hoy. I don't mind them, but I do get why some people think that they stick out as a sore thumb, because they are kind of doing essentially a little stand-up with each of their lines. I appreciate what they actually bring to the movie, because they do, especially as the movie goes on, they do kind of showcase like, okay, this is why Ramses just does not believe that any of this is actually a god, and it's just Moses doing parlor tricks. Because he's like, well, I have these assistants who do this shit, on a regular, so why would this be an actual thing? So I think that's kind of neat. Their song is probably the weakest one in the film, which is Playing with the Big Boys, or I think that's what it's called. I know that's the lyric that you hear the most throughout the song. It's a neat little song. It's kind of cool. I remember as a kid, it kind of creeped me out a bit more than it does now. But it is the weakest one, because it does kind of stick out as like, okay, this is probably the closest thing to like a, let's say, executive mandate. Like, okay, let's have these, kind of funny villain sidekicks who are just there to provide some humor, but also, I don't know, like give it some kind of a Hollywood feel to it. I don't mind them, but I do get why people don't like them. And I will say that if anything, they do kind of disappear from the film towards the end, because you get like, okay, there are the ones who are explaining like, oh, this is how Moses does this or that to Ramses, and you think like, okay, well, that's gonna make it, that's gonna be something that'll be there throughout it, and then once you get to the plague song, that's it. They never appear again. And you'd think that they could have easily done like, okay, like let's actually showcase them meet their demise, or maybe giving some some lessons or whatever to Ramses towards the end, like, advising him to do certain attacks or something like that, which I'm glad that they don't, but at the same time, you kind of feel like they should have been there for that. At least I kind of feel like that was what they were going for, but who knows, maybe, I don't know. Yeah, I just don't think they're that bad, but I get why some people do think they're that bad. But yeah, overall, very incredible in performances. The animation is great. I kind of love the story behind it. This was, again, one of the first movies that DreamWorks did. Jeffrey Katzenberg, who had previously been on Disney during the Renaissance years, had of course moved over to DreamWorks after a falling out with Disney. Supposedly, he always wanted to do something like this over at Disney. I don't know. I know that there's also some story about how Steven Spielberg had essentially said, like, hey, you guys should do the 10 Commandments, which sparked the idea to do this. I don't know if that was meant intentionally or if it was just like, oh, just do something epic, and they just took it as literal. But regardless of it, I think that this being made is just awesome. It's one of the best animated films I've ever seen, 2D or otherwise. It's just a beautiful movie with incredible performances, incredible musical numbers. The animation is just top notch. It's all just really great stuff, and I'm glad it exists. I'm glad Val Kilmer was around for it, regardless of how you feel about his other movies, regardless of how you feel about celebrity voice actors. I'm pretty sure most of us can agree that this is one of his best performances, and, just a prime example of how you can do it right. I don't know. I love The Princess of Egypt, and I'm glad to be talking about it here. It's, one that I've wanted to talk about for a while. Yeah, go watch it. Go watch it this Easter. Go watch it. It doesn't even have to be Easter. You can watch it anytime you want. It's just a really good story, regardless of whether or not you're all that religious or not. Thank you for listening. This has been Octaviano Macias of I Can't Believe It's Not the Mouse, and I'll see you again next time.
I am that I am.
Thanks for stopping by. Go ahead and follow this channel. Subscribe, like, and comment. Ring the bell for notifications. Go ahead and also follow my podcast and give some love to my Patreon account while you're at it. It's www.patreon.com/psycams. Again, thanks for stopping by, and I hope you come back for more in the future.